All right, good morning. So we're up to Siman Ayin Hey. We'll just finish off this Siman before we start the next. Ayin Hey, Halacha Hey, Sif Hey. So says the Mechaber, Erva Ba'ashoshis. Very interesting case. You're not allowed to say Krias Shema opposite an Erva. That has been the theme of this Siman. But what happens if there is a barrier, like a mirror or a glass, and you can see through an Erva? Yeah, imagine there's a glass and you know that you're someone's changing at home or something like that. Are you allowed to say Krias Shema? So erva ba'ashosh is v'rosa derech dofno seho also likris connector dichsiv v'lo yir b'cha ervas dova v'homis chazia, and it can be seen through this sort of thin sheen. Says the Mishnah Berurah Sif Koton Chafei. He shall zuchuchis. So you've got a glass sort of wall and you can see through. Oy beged dak. Or you've got a very thin beged where again the flesh can be seen through it. Or a tefach of basar of an isha, where in a situation where it's normally covered, that's also considered erva. So in that situation, the Mechaber says, also likris konegda, you can't read Krias Shema because at the end of the day, even though there's some material or there's a glass, but you can see the erva and therefore you can't read it. Now, what about closing your eyes? So says the Mishnah Berurah about tzimas einayim shari b'chol zeh lekul alma. Very interesting. If you close your eyes, that will help you. Why? Because at the end of the day, the erva in this situation is covered by some sort of material, and therefore closing your eyes will help. That's the Chochmas Adam, the Chinkos Primigodim, the Inyan Ashashis. Okay. So the Mechaber said that if you don't close your eyes, if you can see it, then also likros. Says the Mishnah Berurah in Sif Kotel Chafov, va'afidu hi bebayis acher, even if the erva is in another house, v'roya oisod derech hashoshes shebechaloin, and you're walking past in the streets and there's someone getting changed and you can't say Krias Shema. The fisha beriyah tola hakosov, because the Torah it's not talking about you being in the same rishus. It's all to do with seeing it. Because it says not to see. In a situation where one went ahead and said Krias Shema when you could see an erva, then you have to repeat Krias Shema. Okay. Sif Vav. Hoyse erva konegdoi. What if you've got an erva opposite you? Vehechzir ponov mimena, and you turn away. Oishe otzam einov, or you close your eyes. Oishehu belayla, or it's nighttime. Oishehu summa, or the person saying Krias Shema is blind and therefore can't see. In those situations, mutar likros. To beriya tolarachmona v'holei chazile, because the Torah attributes it to seeing, and in these situations you can't see. So we'll do the Mishnah Berurah in a second, but that think of scenarios where this could happen. Imagine, you're saying Krias Shema lamita in bed, and your wife is there, and she's not. There are parts of the body which are normally covered above the knee, whatever it may be, or hair, or whatever it may be. So in that situation, can you say Krias Shema? So according to the Mechaber, if you machzir ponov, if you turn around, or you close your eyes, or these sort of situations, then it would be okay. So let's see what the Mishnah Berurah says. Sif Kotzen Chav Zayin. Erva Konegdoi. I'm the Prima Godim Shah Achreinim. The Prima Godim and other Achreinim say, to behu atzmai oram, if the fellow himself is undressed, then all of these eitzes of closing your eyes or turning aside is not going to help you. Okay. V'hechziponov, you turn aside. Rotzolema, afilu hachzoras ponim levad b'loi gufay. The implication of the Mechaber is you don't have to turn your whole body the other way. Just turning your head away from the erva would suffice. Because it's no different to closing your eyes, and if you therefore just turn your head as opposed to your whole body, according to the Mechaber, that would suffice. Or you close your eyes. Now, the Achreinim agree to chol elu ha'etzes, all the eitzes that the Mechaber has said, i.e., turning aside, closing your eyes, whatever it may be. Levad me'achzoras ponim lo mahani. The Achronim argue with the Mechaber, and they say, apart from the eitzah of turning the different direction, none of these eitzahs help, and therefore just closing your eyes is not good enough. The lo sira, but it doesn't say in the pasuk lo sira. It says v'lo yireh b'chol dova erva. It should not be seen. V'rotzoloma lo yira haroya. And therefore, the only eitz according to Achronim that's going to help is if you turn aside. And more than that, it's not good enough just to turn your head aside, but rather the whole body needs to be turned aside. The nasis or erva mitziday, that the erva is considered fully on the side. But if you just turn your head to one side, it will not help. When he himself is in a state of undress, there's no eitzah to speak in divrei Torah. Because of mishpasei zahav, if he's in one rishus and halachic rishus, and somebody else is b'rishus acher, kenegdoi v'hu eitzim einov milarosoi, and he closes his eyes, in that situation that would help. Because you're closing your eyes, plus the other fellow is in a different rishus. V'chein mashma k'tzas b'derech hachaim. U'b'simen ayin tes oisches, b'eishel Avraham mashma, t'chozom is that he's chayzer from this, v'chein b'chay adam, ois tes loy mashma kein. Ochein, im chaloin shal zuchuchis, mafsik beinoi le'erva. Imagine, you're in a shiva or something like that, and there's another guy getting changed, or something, and you can see an erva, or in a different cubicle or something, but it's visible to you, and you close your eyes, then then since the other person is in a different rishus and your eyes are closed, that would help. Because you've got a physical barrier between you and the erva. Interesting halacha. You are allowed to think in divrei Torah when you are undressed. And certainly keneged erva acher. Shenema ervas dova dibur also. Yeah, ervas dova dibur also. Hirhu mutter, but hirhu would be okay. But you can't hear a bracha from your friend. Lot says to be Yitzef, whatever it is, because you can't apply the principle of Shema Kaina, which is the method through which you've been Yitzef, because you're not allowed to respond. You can't speak. It's Ervas Dova, Dibur is Asa. Okay, the Beria Talia says Mishnah Berurah Sif Katan Lamed, even though he may be within Daled Amas, that won't help. That would help. If you're turning aside or you're closing your eyes according to the Mechaber, that would work, even if it's within Daled Amas. The B'tzaya Kaimelon the Siman Ayin Test the Osa Finu Milachrov. Because with Tzaya we say that even if he's Milachrov, that works. But Zeh Gila Kosov the Toli Rak Beria, and therefore the Torah is telling us that it's all to do with vision and being able to see it. And even according to us, like we just said, we're machmir but closing your eyes is not good enough. Then turning aside your whole body from the erva, that would help, even if it's samach, even if it's close by. So therefore, the practical application of this would be, let's say, like I said, you're saying Krias Shema in bed at night, and your wife is in the room, and parts of her body are uncovered, in terms of Hilchos Krias Shema, that ordinarily would be a problem. If you turn, according to the Mechaber, closing your eyes would suffice. But according to the Achronim, we say you actually have to turn aside. That's the only eitzah that would help. And more than just turning your head aside, your whole body aside. So if you turn, your body away from the erva, even if she's close within Daled Amas, that would be sufficient. Okay.
To anything, so any sort of davening or bench.
Yeah. Interesting. Have a look at the next. Let's start the next thing. You'll see. The answer is yes. Sure. Okay. So let's start the next siman. I involve. So now we've got to be careful. So far we've talking about erva, and now we're talking about tzoya. If there's any state of uncleanliness, think a diaper, a nappy, something like that. Or you're in a field and there's tzoya there or something. One has to be careful from saying Krias Shema in that situation. Says the Mechaber, Sif Aleph. So siman I involve Sif Aleph. Tzoya ba'ashoshis. If there's tzoya, again, it's behind a barrier, behind a glass or something. Mutter likris kenegda. You're allowed to say Krias Shema if this tzoya, this excrement, is behind a barrier. Even though you can see it, it's got to be covered. It says in the pasuk, When you go out to war, you've got to cover up the tzeya, and this is covered, so therefore that would be okay. It says in the Mishnah Berurah Sif Katan Aleph. Now this is your point, Shalom. Any barrier where you can actually see through it, it's zuchuchis or it's a very thin material or something. Likres, da. This is it. To b'chol ha'alochas al elu at siman peiches. In all of the halachas that are coming up in the next 11 or so, 12 simonim, v'chein in an issa erva hanizkal el, and so too regarding the issa of erva that we said in the previous simon, kol malkum shen nizkar hadin in Krias Shema. Every time we said the halacha in respect of Krias Shema, kein in hetzer bein in essa, who love dafka Krias Shema, is not only whether it's muta also is not only talking about Krias Shema. Duadin Torah tefillah v'chol yinei kedusha. Right, Shalom, that's your point. It's true for Torah, for tefillah, and any davar shebigdusha. Or bein she'omer b'lashon hakodesh, bein b'lashon chol. Whether you're talking in Hebrew, or whether you're talking in English, your divrei Torah or your davening, or whatever it may be. So it applies to all of it. Kenegda, if the tzoya is opposite you, v'magia l'reach ra also. Now, when we said it's mutter, if the tzoya is opposite you behind the barrier, that you can see it, but it's behind the barrier, that's okay. That's only if there's no reach ra. If there's a bad smell, then it's osa. Even according to that opinion which says that a hafsaka helps you for a bad smell, that's dafka if it's a mechitza which makes the tzoya and you in different reshuyos. Just putting a kli on top of it would not be sufficient. You don't need 4 amas from where the smell stops. So long as the smell doesn't reach you, that would be sufficient. It leaves it at that question as a tzorchian. Do you need dalad amas from the place where kol hareach the smell stops? Okay, says the Machaba in Sif base. Tzoya beguma. What if you've got tzoya in a little guma, in a little ditch, a little hole? Imagine you're in a field, you're doing a camping trip, and there's a little ditch, and there's some tzoya in this ditch. What do you do? Says the Machaba, meniach sandole oleha v'kaira. You put your foot over it, and then you can read it. The chashiva k'machusa, that's considered covering it. The kiven she'ein reach ra magia le'mutan. Since the smell doesn't come towards you, then it's okay. V'hu shelo yehi sandole nogea ba. So long as your shoe is not actually touching the tzoya, that would be a good barrier. That would work. Says the Mishnah Berurah Sif Katan Daled, lav dafka sandal, doesn't have to be your own shoe. Whatever you use to cover it, that would be sufficient. Mahani. For nokat sandal, it tells me the chiddush of a sandal, of a shoe, and that's not going to be the same as covering it beragloi. The vada in gufa choshev kisu kamash melon. Kamash melon, that putting your shoe over it is considered a proper chatzitza, a proper barrier, and that would work. And it's not as if your own flesh is covering it. Yeah, we said before that if your own flesh doesn't help. If you haven't got a couple on, you putting your hand over your head doesn't work. So you putting your direct foot on top of it is not going to help. But if it's a shoe, that would help. Okay, Sif Katan Hey, Shelo Yehei. So this is going on the Machaba, which says, V'hu shelo yeh sandalo nogeba, as long as your shoe is not touching it. Says the Mishnah Berurah in Sif Katan Hey, Rotzolema, Afilu ein hatzoya mispashet al stode hasandal mibachutz ve'ein nira. So what that means to say that it's not, the tzoya, this tzoya is not sort of spreading out on the sides of the shoe. Even though with the glass or this material in between, even if the material of the tzoya is up against the glass, shari, that would be allowed because it's not visible from the outside. Sandolo garatfe, here the sandal, the shoe is worse because at the end of the day the sandal is my malbush, is my clothing. And therefore, if you take it off and you put it over it, that would be a good barrier. Nogea. So we said, so long as your sandal, your shoe is not touching it. If you're just putting your foot over the hole, the ditch, that would be good. But if it's touching the tzoya, then it's a problem. Says the Mishnah Berurah in Sif Katan Vav, Ein be'oilas tomid u'prima godim shemetzadim loymar di'im'acha shekora Krias Shema u'birchoseh motz tzoya devuk b'sandole. If you find out, let's say, for example, you're in a camping trip, and there's a hole and there's some tzoya there. So you think, I've got an answer. I remember the Mishnah Berurah, or the Mechaba, you put your foot over the ditch and you're okay. Good. and then 5 minutes later, you're very happy. You said Krias Shema, and you look on your shoe, and there's all tzoya on your shoe. You didn't succeed. It was touching, and therefore that doesn't work. So do you have to repeat the Krias Shema? Says the Mishnah Berurah over here, in that situation, since it turned out it wasn't effective and your shoe was touching the tzoya, then you've got to repeat Krias Shema. Ayin shamaton hatan. And if the tzoya is sort of spreads around the sides of the shoe, okay, time for one more sif. Sif gimel. If they pass tzoya in front of you, in other words, let's say for example you're learning at home, and your kid or your wife has just changed your child's nappy and the diaper for those listening in America, and they're walking past you, so you got to stop. Says the Mechaber, heviru tzoya lefonov, they're sort of passing the tzoya in front of you. Os likris connected, you can't read when it's opposite you. Or pi chazir, the mouth of a chazir, k'tzoya overes domi. It's got the din of tzoya overes. Afidu oile min hanar, even if the pig, the chazir, has come out of a river, ein harachitz mo'eleslei. The havik graf shalrei, the very pi hachazir has got the status of a graf shalrei, of some sort of chamber pot, and therefore, if the chazir is in front of you, it's not going to work. Good. Says the Mishnah Berurah Sif Kotzen Zayin. V'hu adin im hoisa shota al pnei hamayim. If it's floating on the water, it's also going to be a problem. Kanegdo. I'm a beis Yosef to save it. De'ein lechalik. We don't make a difference between tzur kavur loiveres, whether it's there or whether it's passing. Al kain gam b'zeh bo'in harchok melefonov kamol einov melachrov daladamis. You've got to make sure that if it's visible in front of you, that's bad news. You can't say Krias Shema. So imagine your wife or someone is passing, whoever changes, holding the diaper, the nappy, even if it's far away, but if it's visually in front of you, you've got a problem. Or if it's behind you, then it's dalad amas mimokim shekol harech. It's 4 amas from when the smell stops. V'chin hele ataz v'aprichodosh. Ach, im heviru tzor melefonov al pnei rochboi, on the sides, oz dai b'dalad amas. Then if it's on the sides, then 4 amas will suffice. Tahainu kodim shemagia ledalad amosov, because that's before it's reached your dalad amas. Or it's gone beyond you on the side 4 amas. Kivin shu oz mitzidei, therefore it's on the side, and that would be okay. But if it's in front of you, within your 4 amas, and that sort of way, then it's a problem. He says that on the sides it's got the same din as la'achrov. All you need is daladamas from the place that the smell stops. Because until that point it's like mamish tzor there. Because it's reach ra, which has an ikka, a substance which is the source of the smell, and they both pasken to kiven the tzor veres he, since the tzor is moving, it's not stationary. They say no, even milfonov, that all you need is dalad amas from the point where the smell stops. That i.e. that so long as you can still see it, it's a problem. And if b'diavad in kvakar v'espalav hoysatzoya veres lefonov chuz dalad amas I'm a prima godim shekosav v'zel sheinei v'kvak kasavnu kol hechet ika pluksa chayze v'ker Krias Shema b'loy b'rechaseha. I guess sofik deraisa, and therefore you read the Krias Shema again without the brachas. Of tefillah in a chayze mispala ein sham, but Shemona Esra, which is Rabbanon, you would not repeat the Shemona Esra. The pi chazir, we said, has got a din of a graf shalrei. Says the Mishnah Berurah, you've gotten test. V'machalon pasuach. If you're sitting in your cottage farm and a chazir goes past and the window is open over in mutzalikres, I'm besiman ayin test sif beis b've'halach Mishnah Berurah mashakot nichtav sham. Okay, so Mr. Hashem will get there. Okay, say we'll leave it there. Have a good Shabbos.